Thank you all to everyone for joining us. Again, this is our webinar, How to Take Ownership of Your Career with Enova. So my name is Courtney Barrett. I am a brand strategy manager here with Fairygodboss. I'm really excited to speak with you all today. To start out, got a few housekeeping items for you. First off, if you're new to Fairygodboss, we are the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace for women by increasing transparency. We offer a ton of free resources like our anonymous company reviews. We've got job postings, articles, virtual recruiting events, and more to help women succeed in their careers. Before we get things started today, I did want to let you know that we'll be taking questions at the end of this session. So you can ask them either as yourself or anonymously using the Q&A feature at the bottom bar of your Zoom screen. We'll also be recording the session today. So if you do have to take a break, feel free to. We will be sending it out as a follow-up so you can go back and rewatch anything that you may have missed. I want to start out today by thanking our sponsor for today's conversation, which is Enova. Enova International is a leading financial technology company providing online financial services through its AI and machine learning powered lending platform. Their philosophy is simple. It is work someplace awesome. As a $1 billion fintech leader, the culture at Enova has always been rooted in its mission and values. They really pride themselves on hiring for culture add versus culture fit because they understand that diverse perspectives create the best answer. Their work doesn't end there. Their day-to-day decisions and policies embrace things like equity and inclusion and really aim to foster a sense of belonging at Enova regardless of race, gender, or ethnicity. So with that, I would love to go ahead and intro our two fabulous panelists today. Joining us from Enova, Sierra, I'm going to go over to you first.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Sierra Navarro. It's really nice to be here with you all today. I'm the Director of Technical Operations at Enova, which includes our site reliability, observability, and resilience disciplines. So I work with a lot of passionate and intelligent people, both within my department as well as throughout the organization to make sure that, Enova's production environment is stable. We have visibility into what we need to observe and alert on, and we're able to quickly recover in the event of failure, as well as learn and improve as a result of those events. So it's a lot of interesting and challenging work.
Awesome. Brianna, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Brianna Fabry. Also really happy to be here with you today. I'm a senior director at Enova, and I've played a lot of different roles over my 10 years here, from head of marketing to head of business, and now kind of a smattering of different projects and initiatives that kind of range from internal consulting to M&A type activities. So have a lot of different varied experience in changing roles. And that's something that, I really have loved about my career path at Enova, which I know we'll dig into in a little bit.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. So we're going to go ahead and go into our Q&A portion of the session here. Again, if you do have questions for Sierra or Brianna throughout the session today, please do use that Q&A and you'll have the chance for them to answer them live. So I wanted to start out with just a little bit about how you first heard about Enova, how you first got interested in the company, and from there, how long you've been with the company. So Sierra, I'll go to you first.
Sure. When I heard about Enova, it was through a friend, and there were a few things that stuck out to me. One, it was in a cool spot in downtown Chicago, which was great. I could tell that many of the people there were really passionate. At the time, it was rapidly growing. It felt like there was a lot of possibility. It was still in kind of like a startup mentality, so it felt like there was a lot of growth potential, which was really exciting for me. And now fast forward, and I'll be hitting 11 years with Enova in August, which is crazy.
Oh, congrats. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Brianna, what about you?
Yeah, I actually came to Enova kind of through the traditional LinkedIn route. I was looking for a new job and, I've also been here for about 10 years. So, when I think Sarah and I were both looking, it was kind of coming out of, that last recession and job hunting was a little bit hard. So I was doing a very classic, just like throw everything at the wall through LinkedIn. But it was, coming into Enova and seeing that, as Sarah described, that kind of, exciting growth potential, the vibe of the company and the direction it wanted to take and the people who worked there. And so it was really just coming in and having conversations with everybody that I got really hooked and really excited. And, you know, again, a lot of people who know me and know my Enova story kind of, you know, they know the story, but I think, you know, the great part of Enova is just how adaptive it is to, you know, finding the right opportunities for people whenever, you know, the people come along, right? Not when the opportunities kind of come along. And so, you know, a great example of that is I came in interviewing for one role on our existing brand in the US consumer space, lending space. And when I was in the interviews, they were kind of talking about, well, maybe, you know, in the future, we're going to expand our offerings. We're thinking about going into this other area of the market. We haven't figured out if we're going to do that yet. It's just a kind of a totally nascent idea. And I said, that is what I want to work on. Like, that sounds amazing. So, you know, if you really want to do that, like, let's talk, because I would love to come and, you know, be a part of that. And so they kind of went away for 2 weeks and had some internal meetings and then came back and they were like, yeah, you know what, we decided to do it. And we decided we'd love to have you come on board for that. So it was just a great example of, like, you know, having some good conversations and driving, you know, that sort of really my passion in an, you know, an idea that they hadn't even committed to yet, and turning that into, you know, the job opportunity that launched these last 10 years staying around at Enova.
Awesome. I was going to say, it sounds like it definitely worked out for you. Congrats to you both on those milestones. That's really wonderful. And what a great story, Brianna. Great. Awesome. So the next question for each of you is, we would love to hear, what skills do you possess that you believed have really helped you most throughout your career, and particularly during your time with Enova?
Yeah, I can start. You know, I think first off, you know, again, in an environment like this, right, that is sort of very open and flexible to, you know, creating opportunities, to, you know, adapting to where you are and where you want to go in your career. I think, you know, that skill of just sort of, you know, going for it, right? Doing anything, right? And so I've always just said, okay, if there's a problem to be solved, like, I'm just going to go attack it. I might not know what I'm doing yet. I might not yet be the subject matter expert, but I'm just going to go in there and, like, own it, figure it out, you know, and get a resolution. And so, you know, I think it's just that kind of attack, right? Of, you know, not really trying to play within a role, not trying to, like, just say, this is my job and I've got to, like, kind of go by a progression or go by a certain set of boundaries, and rather just saying, like, there's value to be added here. And I think I can do that. And even if I'm not, like, fully, you know, versed in it yet, I can go in and figure it out, and I can go and get that experience, which is beneficial to both the company and to me. Right. And so, that's, I think, what's driven a lot of my success and a lot of my ability to then move around in different roles and play, you know, different roles and take on different responsibilities.
Yes. Sarah?
Yeah, I love that. I think adaptability and that initiative is huge and very valued at Enova for sure. I think if I had to, you know, come down to one thing, boil it down to one thing, for me, it would be grit. And if you've read the book by Angela Duckworth called Grit, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. You know, she's spearheading some really interesting and important studies on the role that grit plays in success. And, you know, she defines grit as passion and perseverance for very long-term goals, right? So having stamina, sticking with your future day in and day out, and not just for a week and not just for a month, but for years, and really working hard to make that future a reality. So, you know, what does that look like in practice? You know, I think it's courage, it's conscientiousness, it's perseverance and resilience for sure. And it's that passion, right? So, you know, I think when it all comes down to it, what is the thing that's allowed me to, you know, be here for 11 years in different roles, you know, with, you know, a goal in mind that I had for many, many years, and how am I going to get there? I think, you know, it's the grit is really the crux of my career success.
Very nice. Great. Yeah. And I know I haven't read Grit by Angela Duckworth, but I have read The Grit Factor, which is by a woman who flew helicopters. And I loved that whole concept of grit. I think that that's a word that is kind of new to the workforce. So I love that you brought that up. All right. Wonderful. All right. So moving along, wanted to hear a little bit from each of you, just a little bit more about your individual career paths. So Brianna, I'll go to you first. It sounds like you've moved around a little bit. Would love to hear a little bit more about what that looked like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came to Enova from a marketing background. I had been doing marketing for about 6.5 years at the Art Institute of Chicago. So totally different industry, different kind of medium, but stuck, sort of through that marketing lens, and came in and as I said, had this opportunity to join kind of what we called at the time an internal startup at Enova. So, Enova itself was still a bit in its own startup days, but we sort of carved out space for this new product, and a small team that was totally dedicated, and we sort of went off and sat separately and gave ourselves the space to kind of do that outside of the parameters of everything else going on at Enova. And I was head of marketing, and so over time we built a product, we built the tech platform that the product sat on, and over time we grew the product and we grew out the team. And so I built out a marketing team, and we were launched on all the major marketing channels, doing all those initiatives. And myself, I started to kind of move a little bit out of the day-to-day of the marketing, running a TV campaign or digital ads or things like that, and more into some of the business kind of decisions, thinking about regulatory and licensing and where is the product going next, and how do we work with the analytics team to develop the right models to kind of take an ad and expand the product offering. And so I kind of was organically moving into, and again, I talked about like just saying, I'm just going to go do that, right? That wasn't in my purview as head of marketing, but I was like, hey, a whole bunch of licensing stuff has to happen in order for us to expand our product offering and grow the business. So I'll just go take that on, right? And I'll just go take on this, or I'll go take on that. And, that kind of organically transformed into a bit of like head of P&L or head of business. And I realized that that's, really where I wanted to go next. I didn't want to just stay within marketing. I wanted to kind of move into more of a general business leadership role. And so, had some conversations with leadership at Enova about, that's where I want to move next. And, had to kind of stick it out and wait for, a minute until the right opportunity did come along. But they knew that I wanted that. And so when that opportunity opened up, I was kind of top of the list, and they were like, great, do we think this is going to work? Awesome. And so moved over to play that role for the last 5 years or so. And then, since then have kind of moved out of just, sort of like head of a P&L role into, thinking about other sorts of, business opportunities. So I said, all right, great. I've done that, and I've done it kind of on 2 different businesses. I want to expand my scope a little bit. So I'd love to get more involved in other aspects, like understanding, the M&A side of the world, as we're, Enova's matured so much, and now Enova's in the position to think about acquiring companies or partnering or doing different things. I want to understand that part of, the business, and understand how, we look at valuing companies, or how we look at our strategic roadmap and, activities like that. And so, had the chance over the last year and a half to kind of get more involved in those things, and take on some sort of more temporary or ad hoc kind of shorter term projects, but that are like at a really high sort of strategic level for the company. And, and of course, over that whole arc, right, my role is transitioning from being like individual contributor, where I was literally setting up PPC campaigns day one, into kind of more and more management leadership roles, where I'm now trying to affect change through, lots of other people. Some are direct reports, many are not, many are just peers or other stakeholders across the organization. So it's been a really fun and interesting ride, and I don't, there's no like ceiling yet, right? There's no end in sight. I mean, the ultimate goal is to kind of continue that train and get into the exec team. I get to sit in on some of the strategy meetings, and I report to the CEO, so I have like that glimpse of that's the next step. And I'm really excited that Enova has kind of got that whole arc, that you can go from junior kind of entry level all the way up if you wanted to.
Yeah. I love what you said about, just having that confidence to go to your leadership and tell them that you're interested. I think oftentimes people are hesitant to do that. And I think that just kind of putting yourself out there is that first step. And obviously you can see how that worked out for you. So big kudos to you, and definitely we'll be excited to hear what you do in the next 10 years, because it sounds like so far it's been really eventful for you. So great. I'm going to go over to Sierra, and same question for you here.
Yeah, absolutely. So having been here for 11 years, I can group my career path into probably 4 or so different phases. And I would put the first phase with a big chunk of time, right? Like 7 years, I would throw into this bucket of really gaining experience and taking on more responsibilities. So when I was hired at a very entry level role, individual contributor. My first focus was just doing that job and doing it exceptionally well, to the best of my ability. And then from there, over time, it was learning how to be a manager. It was learning how to influence, learning how to manage other managers. How do you build a team? How do you deliver tough feedback? How do you manage multiple teams solving ambiguous problems, right? So in the 7-year period, I went through a lot of different managers reporting to a lot of different people. The company went public. We acquired our first businesses. There was a lot of change and a lot of challenge. And that's really, I think, where I started to hone that skill of grit, being adaptable, being able to take on different roles, to step in, when there was an opportunity. So with every challenge, with every loss, with every frustration, there was always an opportunity waiting in the wings if I was willing to see it. And so during that time, I really started to think about being creative in the midst of constraints, and how to see even problems as possibilities, right? And when you're with something for a long enough time, you can start to see that, right, and have that creative eye for those things. And that's something that's still very important to me today. And after those 7 years, I would say there was a second phase of just 1 year where I was tapped on the shoulder to have a very different job, but within the same company, which was very unique, right? I was tapped to do program management for one of our P&Ls called Enova Decisions. And to do so, I had to step away from tech ops and everything I had known for 7 years and everything that I was building for 7 years and do something very different from what I had been doing. And when you've been doing something for 7 years, it's natural to think, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to do something else? Am I even going to want to come back after this year, right? Like, what does this look like? It really kind of tore that open for me. So having that opportunity to try my hand in a totally different area was a wonderful opportunity. And during that year, the teams and we accomplished a lot. I was personally able to learn a lot, but I was also able to confirm that, yes, I miss it. I want to go back. I want to go back to technology. I have some things I still want to accomplish. But having that opportunity to learn that within Enova and not having to go to another company to solidify that was really immensely valuable for me. And so after that, I was able to go back to tech ops for about 2 years. And I had the opportunity for the first time to lead that group, right? That group of people, those disciplines, it felt in many ways like the culmination of many years, many ideas I had, many things I wanted to accomplish, things that I knew that would not only make tech ops better, but Enova's tech organization better, Enova as a whole better. And being able to really drive those for the first time was very exciting. And now the last stage that I'm in, stage 4, right now, the current stage started about a year ago. And that was at a time where I was tapped to do another thing I had never done before, right? So we were acquiring our most, recent big business On Deck. And they asked me to be the person in charge to integrate both companies from a tech perspective, right? That's something I had never done before. I never integrated 2 publicly traded companies and, the technology that runs them. So it's been very challenging and also very interesting and rewarding, and being able to do the On Deck integration work as well as continue to be the director of tech ops and do both things at the same time. It's been a really exciting and fulfilling phase of my career right now. So I'm excited to see what comes next.
Amazing. Yeah. And what a thing to be able to put on your resume, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So I know, just based on both of your career paths, sounds like there are a ton of opportunities for growth, continuous development, continued learning. If you had to say what was the one thing that has led you to stay with Enova, what would that be? And I'll go back to Brianna here.
Yeah. And so I'll cheat a little bit and just say, obviously, if you ask any Enovan, like, why do they come to Enova? Why do they stay? I mean, everybody pretty much always says the people. And I think that's very true. So I want to just throw that out there and say that is like a true pillar, piece of this. However, For me personally, it's also been the fact that these opportunities have always been there, right? I've built so much equity with leadership here, right? With our CEO and with the leadership team, and I know where I stand with them, and I know that they value me, and I know that they have, my back, and that they're, going to continue to help me get to where I want to go, and you can't just walk away from that, and trade it on a dime for, going into some new place. And you have to build that all over again, right? And that takes time. It takes a lot of time, and it takes, you're gonna have to prove it out and prove yourself out before you kind of get back to par. And so, there's a lot of value to that, and I think that's been such an exciting piece of this journey, because it's not just me, it's not just about me, and it's about kind of my relationship here, and the relationships that I build with the leadership team, and where that can take me. So I think having that, and having that sort of trust and faith that, like, there's always going to be opportunities, even if I can't see, like, we don't have we've been a startup, we've kind of matured over the years, we don't have a super kind of hierarchical or very like clearly defined organization where it's like, I know exactly what my next role is going to look like, so I'm just waiting to get there, and I'm taking the time, or I know that I'm going to replace this person, or I know that my next title is going to be X, right? It's a lot more ambiguous here, which for those that are not comfortable with that sort of ambiguity, that can be a challenge. But if you can embrace that and just say, like, I know we'll figure it out, and the exciting part is that you can kind of help shape it and create it. And so I don't know exactly what my next role, will be, because every 6 to 12 months, it kind of shifts and morphs and changes. And that's what makes it fun and exciting. And that's what, I get to like learn different things. And, Sierra got to go and kind of explore different areas, and then also be able to say, I want to come back around to things that I did before that I was really passionate about. And, I could do the same thing in my career. I could see myself going back and running another P&L at some, or I could see myself going into a totally different direction. And it's kind of being able to see the possibilities are endless, and they're wherever I want to drive towards.
Love that. Sierra, what about you?
I mean, drop the mic. That was absolutely perfect. Yeah. I mean, on my list, number one, like Brianna said, was the people, right? Like, we work with incredibly passionate, intelligent people. It's really what makes Enova special. And we all say that, but it is real. It is true. And beyond that, I can't say enough about the experiences and the opportunities. It's exactly what Brianna said, the opportunity to raise your hand, to identify a space, to see a problem, to take ownership of solving that from end to end. There's always different things to be able to, get your hands dirty with and explore. And every day, every month, every year being different, I can't imagine doing the same thing for 11 years. There's absolutely no way, right? And it's never felt like that. Every 6 months, every year, it's something different, right? So it feels like so many different jobs and so many different careers within just one organization. And I also think, just very tactically, like, I can't say enough about our sabbatical program. That's another thing where I can't imagine being here for 11 years without having that. And I've been, very fortunate to have 2 sabbaticals so far, and being able to take that month off away from work. And that is the encouragement, right? Like, disconnect, get away from work, rest, recharge, fill your tank, and coming back ready for those next few years. I think that's definitely something that's, allowed me not to burn out, and to come back with my best self, and continue that next challenge. So.
Wonderful. And Brianna, have you also taken advantage of the sabbatical program?
Yeah, I have. I have my second sabbatical that I'm actually planning this year. And I agree. I mean, it's of course a chance to kind of get away from work and recharge and sort of regroup yourself, but also just the opportunity to go and do something really exciting, right? I mean, everybody's going to figure out what works for them in their sabbatical, but having a month where you can actually say, I'm going to go travel for a month, which isn't something you get to do, right? We went to do a trip that we would never otherwise get to do if you were trying to just say, oh, we're doing a long weekend or a week somewhere, right? This time we were able to go somewhere that you don't get to go to if you don't have that much time, right? So having that kind of life experience, I think, because that was just like a crucial part of, building me and building my life experience, and and building kind of the journey that I had with my husband, and what we wanted to do before we had kids and all of that. So it was first sabbatical was sort of epic. Second sabbatical will be different because now we do have two kids. So the choices are a little bit different, but and we're also kind of in this coming out of pandemic world, but I think it will be epic and monumental in a totally different way, right? Because it'll be a focus for us about family and taking our girls somewhere and doing a kind of an extended trip with them, which even through all this pandemic stuff, we've had time at home, but it's still been like juggling with work and everything. So I think having that chance to just have a life experience, right, and having your work give you that is really fulfilling and rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what Sierra said. I think it's just so important that you do take that time off, especially if you've been in your role for, an extended amount of time. And Brianna, it sounds like yours is going to be coming at a wonderful time, as I think everyone could probably use a sabbatical coming out of the pandemic. But great, that's actually a perfect segue. I want to get into a little bit more about kind of the flexibility as well as the work-life balance you've been able to find at Enova. So Brianna, I know for you, you are a working mom. I would love to hear about, what it's looked like for you. I know today you're in office, but what it's looked like for you kind of within this past year and a half as you've been juggling children and working from home, and ultimately how you've been able to find support.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved having kids and kind of becoming a mom and going through that within Enova. I mean, we, as a startup, as a fintech, as you might imagine, we had kind of a pretty youthful employee base. Certainly a number of years ago, we were all sort of, kind of in the same age range, and kind of all coming through a lot of the same life stages together. And so, when I had my first girl, back in 2017, there was a sort of a rash of, other working moms going through the same thing, which was fun, because it was a bit of a shared experience. And, and obviously that makes it great because then, that you're in sort of a great space that's, we're supporting each other, Enova is supporting us. It's through all those sort of little pain points of fighting for space in the pump room or, whatever the case may be. But we kind of all went through that together. So it was actually a lot of fun going through it the first time. And I, there's that little part of me that missed going through that the second time because I, when the pandemic hit, I had just literally like the day before finally kind of told my boss that I was expecting, and it was like just at that mark. So I left and like literally nobody knew I was pregnant. And by the time I come back later this year, I'll have a 1-year-old at home, it's just a weird experience, right? And so, this time around, talking about flexibility, right? And I think this is again what I love about Enova, right? So, they're so willing to kind of work for, to figure out what works for you. And so the first time around, obviously I took a maternity, which was so great and important, and such a crucial time to kind of be with a new daughter. The second time around, I was at home. And I personally knew that I kind of needed to keep that connection to work. I didn't want to just, absent and go away for, 3+ months or whatever and like have zero connection. And I, kind of figured I had a pretty easy baby the first time around. I was very lucky. I was hoping I'd have another easy baby the second time around. And so I said, what, I'm maybe not going to take a full maternity. Like I'm already at home. I can have, newborn at home with me, jump in and forth with a couple phone calls and just keep touch with my teams, keep pace of what's going on and not feel so disconnected, because that's what's going to make me feel better as a working mom, right? That I can do both. And that I don't feel like I have to sort of like give one up or, lose traction, especially when I already feel a bit disconnected from work. And I feel like I'm sort of not as productive, as accomplished and getting as much done in the work arena just because of the environment. And so, we worked it out. We figured out a plan that worked for us. And I'm certainly not saying everybody needs to do that, right? Because maternity is a really, special and important time, but it was what worked for me. And I was just really appreciative that like I had that flexibility to choose a path that made sense. for me, and that, gave me fulfillment in both aspects. So it's you just kind of got to figure it out. And if you're in the right environment, if you have people who support you, they'll kind of help you just find that balance. And the last year is certainly not the one that I'm going to say was like my most amazing year, as a professional. But at the same time, I can look back and I can say, actually, I did accomplish different things. It wasn't intense. It wasn't grueling. I wasn't like burning the candle at both ends, working all hours. And, but at the same time, I was learning different skills. I was learning how to, manage through other people more. I was learning how to kind of step in and out of different projects without being the owner of, those projects. Right. And just provide guidance and keep people moving down, the path. And so it was really developing a different skill set that was equally, important. And so, but it gave me the time that I needed to kind of be home with 2 young kids running around without school. So, thankfully they're both back in school now. And so now I can kind of start to think about what a transition back to the office will look like.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I think, I don't think last year was the best year for any of us, but it sounds like, having that flexibility to kind of create your own schedule and do what made you feel most comfortable. I love that. Would love to go to Sierra. So would love to hear just a little about from you, kind of how you've taken advantage of flexibility or how you make your schedule work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, working remotely and having that connection to our homes and our families has been just a huge benefit. I don't have children, so I can't speak to that side of things, but just, saving on my commute has allowed me so much more time to spend outdoors, to, get a load of laundry done before the workday starts, to prep dinner during lunch, things that would just pile up, and I would do at home at night or on the weekends. It's a much more kind of fluid schedule now, which it's been very fulfilling. I've had more time to learn new things, from cooking to exploring projects like, paving our patio to, electricity things, right? Like I'm a big DIYer and I didn't have time to do all of that stuff when I was commuting so often. I was away from the house so often. So, I think this time of working remotely has, it's been challenging in so many different ways, but it's also had so many different benefits. So again, just trying to find that opportunity and the possibilities within the problems, I think has been great. It's been a tough year, but there's been a lot of positives too.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I love what you both said about kind of using this time to maybe learn other skills, whether that's work related or more so like hobby related, like you said. Before we hopped on our call today, I was complimenting Sarah on her beautiful map in the background, which it looks like was one of your projects. So
yes.
Yeah, I think, I love that. I think we all at least can put down that we learned something new during this past year. So great. Awesome. So I want to move into a little bit more about each of you. So I'd love to hear from Sierra. So who would you say is one woman in your life who has helped you or inspired you to really reach your full potential?
Yeah, for sure. My mom is someone who has always set a high bar of excellence for herself, and particularly when it came to work. So I remember growing up, she would come home from her day job and she'd do everything that she needed to do with us and my siblings and the house. And then she would sit down and she taught herself how to code. Right. She went the extra mile on anything that she did. She's always been that way. She's never stopped at good enough. And I was a witness to that growing up. And, she recognized my strengths and interests at a young age, and she really cultivated those, especially when it came to schoolwork. So, when my classmates were putting together like trifold presentation boards and whatnot on Egypt, like I created a website instead. And no one had ever done that before. So it was even weird trying to figure out like, how do you present this to the rest of the class? Like we had to figure out how to like roll in those really big TVs, like strapped to the thing, you know what I mean? And it was a mess, but we made it work. So there was always this sense of, even though I could stop here, maybe this amount of effort would get me an A, which is great. If I knew that it wasn't my best, it didn't feel comfortable or authentic. And so no matter if my classmates treated me differently or it made me stick out or whatever, my mom was someone who always made it more comfortable for me to stick to my guns and aim for my own personal bar of excellence and not anybody else's. So I would definitely say it's been my mom.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I love that, now here you are, using not directly, but still some of those skills that you learned while you're doing, right, like an elementary school project. Brianna, did you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely love those stories, Sierra. That's awesome that, you went to building the website. I mean, and it's so you too. So it's great. Yeah, I think, I've never been like the type of person that's like easily able to kind of pinpoint like, oh, this person, is my like hero or my, role model, or I'm the type of person I think that just takes a lot from lots of different people, right? I try to just like find something in everybody I observe and like hook into, and, you learn so much, both things that you like and things that you don't like, right? It's, I sit in a room and I kind of observe like the people who are maybe a step above me or whatever, and I see how they conduct themselves or how they talk about a problem or how they relate to others or how they manage junior people, and you can kind of see like that seems like it works, that seems like it wasn't the right choice, so I've learned something from that. And so there's so many people I think that influence me in that way, and certainly in Enova, outside of Enova, I mean my mom's also the similar sort of story of just somebody that taught me like I think those great values of just always be your best, always push that extra mile, always give it a little bit more meaning, don't just like do it to the letter, but figure out why are you doing it, what is the real message you want to send there, and how do you connect that to people and make it feel like genuine and meaningful. And so, I think you try to find those things that you like about lots of the people around you and kind of cobble that into your own vision of like, this is the persona that inspires me, and being realistic, like you're not going to hit it all the time, right? But you kind of hold that up as you're like, okay, that's right. Like, let me go back and say like, yep, I just observed somebody else doing it that way, and I don't need to do it that way. And I have this conversation a lot with, people who I mentor or, kind of mid-level managers. And, you have that conversation, I think, at some point in everybody's career about like having a voice, right? Or having a voice at the table, having a presence. And some people kind of have said, but I don't want to change myself, right? There's a lot of loud voices at the table. There's a lot of like really commanding people. And I'm not naturally that way. And I don't want to feel like I have to change myself to be that way. And I think, it's really been rewarding for me to kind of learn how to help coach somebody to see the path through that without, sort of just making them feel like they have to change their voice, right? And helping them instead say, you don't have to be the loudest voice at the table. I have, somebody on my team, I'm sure Sierra, you'll know who I'm talking about, who's, got a really just actually a quiet voice, a really soothing and calm voice. She's one of those people that like you want her in the room because she just makes you feel good, right? She makes you feel calm. She makes you feel in control. She makes you feel comfortable. And so she's not like loud and commanding and type A, but she's actually got such a strong presence with so much power behind her delivery. You stop and listen when she asks a question, because if she's asking it, it's really pointed and it's really meaningful and it's really valuable. And so you can cultivate that same thing depending on, how, whatever your personality is. And so I think it's been really fun to kind of, see that play out and learn how to get better at helping people like kind of unearth that and hone it and turn it into something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about, it's not always just one person, like you can find sources of inspiration everywhere. And that's a great segue. I would love to hear from Sierra. So related to some of the work that you do with the Women's Employee Resource Group at Enova, what would you say, is most fulfilling about that work? And really what sets Enova apart when it comes to advancing women through programs like that?
Yeah. And Brianna can speak to this really well as well. She's our executive sponsor for Women at Enova this year. But, I would say Women at Enova was our first affinity group, but it has not been our last. We have so many affinity groups at Enova right now, from Women at Enova to Parents at Enova, Black at Enova, Pride at Enova, South Asians at, there's so many different groups and there's so many different things that you can do and get involved in and, be supportive of and be a participant of. I think in general, Brianna touched on this too. Enova encourages that work-life balance, right? We work really hard at Enova, and if you're not ready to work hard, this might not be the space for you. But there's also that encouragement of, we know you have a life outside of work, so work hard, but do what you got to do, right? Get your job done. And we also have, programs like Women in Technology. We've done a conference called ShyWitCon for many, many years now. We have it coming up again. It's going to be virtual again this year, in September. Another opportunity to just reach out into the Chicagoland area and to, women in technology, and be a support for one another, and, provide some inspiration and motivation and, support there. So, I can't also emphasize enough the mentoring opportunities. I've had some phenomenal mentors at my time at Enova, and they've played, a very tangible role in my career, and having somebody that I could, bounce ideas off of that was outside of my, space in tech has been so helpful to me. And then also being able to return that and be a mentor for other people. And I love what Brianna mentioned about, finding your authentic voice, because I'm somebody who also, I'm not the loudest person in the room. And especially being a woman in tech, for a long time, it was like, I'm going to have to change myself. Right. But over time, in talking to mentors and talking to other people, it was really about finding my authentic voice, and being able to help others find that for themselves has been incredibly rewarding. And then, obviously just career advancement. Brianna's got her story. I've got mine. We're missing Ranning today, but she's also somebody who has been here for over a decade, who has climbed the career ladder at Enova. And so, we're three examples, but we're not the only examples of, how Enova has been just a fantastic employer for everybody, but, women in particular as well.
I love that. Awesome. Brianna, I would love to hear from you a little bit about your work with the Women's Affinity Network.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a great group, and Sierra has already mentioned kind of some of the highlights in terms of the programming that we do. I mean, whether it's informal stuff like coffee meetups, or the formal stuff like the ShyWitCon or Chicago Women in Technology Conference, which has been a big deal and kind of growing every year, and something that we're really proud of promoting, and I think it just all goes back to kind of creating those opportunities for people to get together. I mean, again, if the backbone of everything we are is sort of people, right? And it's like-minded people, only in the sense of like, we all come here to work hard and make a difference and make an impact and do something, because we're all driven. And that's like what I love about that sort of shared experience of like, you come here and you're not in a room with like a bunch of people who don't want to be there, who don't want to actually like put in the work. You come here and you are going to be pushed by everybody else in the room, no matter what level they're at, no matter what their background or their role is. They're going to ask you challenging questions. They're going to pick apart your theory and test it and make sure that it's, the right one, that you've understood the problem, that you're coming up with the best solutions, that or coming up with ideas that you never even thought of, right? I learn as much from the people who report to me, or, the kind of the people who are more junior in the room, as I do from the more senior people. And so I think it's just creating that space then that's, one layer outside of the work, meeting, to say, let's get together and let's talk about how we can be there for one another. And, whether that's within women at Enova and kind of the coffee meetups, and just, having that sense of camaraderie, or parents at Enova and kind of, just all sharing in the like, how do you do this, right? With kids at home, and how do you balance this? And does anybody have ideas for how to entertain a 2-year-old while you're on a Zoom call, right? To Pride or Ola, which is our, Latinx community, or any of the other kind of communities that can get together and share sort of, their Ola does a great thing, I think, where they, they share like music, or, just something every week, right? To kind of, just keep that conversation thread going. And sometimes it's just those little things, right? Of, like somebody who's just out there kind of on Slack or whatever your messaging, platform is, who's just kind of like sharing little, tidbits of home. I mean, we have like a baking and kind of, home cooking Slack channel that's, open to everybody, but, people are always posting like, oh, I made bread. Oh, I made this. Oh, like, look at this, like cool paella thing or whatever it is. And, and that was like a huge hit over the last year, obviously. But those things kind of build the community and make it more than just a place to come to work, right? You're building friendships, you're building, networks, you're building kind of support systems. And so I think those things have been really great to see them kind of come alive. And like Sierra, I personally have really loved, becoming more of a mentor over the last number of years. And I mean, I've been mentoring for many years, formally and informally through programs that Enova hosts or what have you. But I mean, obviously the further I get in my own experience, the more I feel like I actually have to offer and the more, value I can kind of add to a conversation. And so, it's been particularly rewarding over this last, year or two, where I feel like I've actually got, things that are useful and helpful to people who are in a variety of different kind of roles or life stages. I have not just like my team that I kind of know and have been growing and cultivating, but people who've come from, on deck from companies that we've recently acquired who, are based in New York or, Denver or other places. And I can start to connect to them, even though I don't know their job or their role, specifically, but we're finding like ways to kind of talk about how do you grow at Enova? How do you grow your own career? How do you handle like work-life balance? And so it's been a lot of fun and, really actually that's one of the things I love most about my job now.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've done a bit of a blend of both formal and informal mentoring. As far as more of the formal programs at Enova, what does that process look like? Is it kind of like a match, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we call it Power of Three. So basically all of our exec team has 3 people that they mentor that are sort of in the senior kind of leader category. And, typically there are sort of purposeful matches in the sense of, maybe this person is just moving into kind of taking on a P&L. And so we're going to match that person with somebody who's really got strategy and a lot of breadth and experience in thinking about how to build a business and grow a business. And so that person, maybe they never interacted before, but they can kind of really bring a color to, helping that person think through some problems or, something like that. So there's a little bit of that goes on, behind the scenes where they try to match people up in terms of just, finding, folks who have experience and folks who kind of are growing into new areas in their career and finding that connection. And then that sort of translates down into the next level. So all of those senior leaders will also mentor 3 people who are kind of a level or 2 below them. And, again, there's a bit of a match. I mean, obviously we're getting to a fairly wide group. So, you start to, there's a little bit of the same thing that goes in of like, I think this person is good at that skill and that would be a good fit. But, we start to just sort of throw people together and see what happens. And so it's a year-long program. And, it's flexible, right? Everybody can kind of make it what they need it to be. Some people I meet with, recurring every month. Some people I meet with more frequently at the beginning, and we sort of like work through a couple things, and then it becomes more ad hoc. And so it really depends on what that person needs, and at least that's how I like to do it. Is, I mean, it's got to be something that works for the mentee and for what they need. And so it lasts for a year, and then at the end of the year we pick new people, and so you get a rotation and you get to interact and get a bunch of different mentors and kind of hear different perspectives from lots of different people.
Awesome. I love that. Great. So we've got just about 10 minutes left. I did want to just remind our audience today, if you do have questions for Sierra and Brianna, please feel free to add them in the Q&A. I do have one last question that I would love to go to each of you for. It's kind of always my fun way to end these sessions. So related to your career, what advice would you give your younger self, kind of knowing what you know now? And I'll start with Sierra.
Yes, I love this question. If I had to go back to my, younger self 11 years ago, I think what I would teach her is something that I've learned more recently, which is the paradox that, time spent filling my own tank won't take away time from getting work done or, handling things at home or whatever the case may be. I'm very driven. I'm always very busy. And for a long time, this was an area that I really neglected, right? Time spent, on myself felt selfish or unproductive, or like I could have used that 30 minutes to prep for this or get this other thing done. But it actually makes me better, in all of those areas. So if it's an, hour in the morning, if it's a half hour, whatever amount of time I can give myself in the morning before work, doing my own thing, that's not time wasted. It's actually paying dividends. And so if I could go back and tell myself to do something different, I would say, take care of yourself. It's vitally important to your health, to your well-being, and ultimately to your career success. You're going to be better in your meetings. You're going to think clearer. You're going to be more creative if you are not running on empty. And if you are making sure that you're spending time taking care of yourself. And I think that is so true of working parents, but, also folks like us, who don't have kids, you still have to set aside that time and take it for yourself. And it's not time wasted. I'm telling you, you're going to be better throughout, your day, your weeks, your months, if you really set aside that time to take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Sarah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, I think particularly women, like you said, Sarah, sometimes we feel guilty, right? Or we feel like it's selfish. But I heard a quote recently that was, it was like, investing in yourself is the best thing you can invest in, right? Because, at the end of the day, like you said, you're not going to be your best. You're not going to be able to do your best work if you're running at a half empty tank. So right. I think that's super important. And thank you for sharing your perspective there. So Brianna, I'll go to you. Same question.
Yeah, I think I'll maybe touch on another theme, though I totally agree with Sierra's, like I said. But another theme is, one that's kind of driven me through my career is just really embracing change, right? And that's like, obviously it's a hot button topic for everybody, really. I mean, it's all over kind of workplace culture is embracing change. And as you become a manager and you have to like manage through change, you see how difficult it is and how much certain people struggle with it. And, I think, like in my childhood, right? Like I lived in the same apartment my entire life growing up, and I went to the same school from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And, so I had a lot of like constancy. And then all of a sudden, then there was a lot of change, right? And I remember even like the little things at the very beginning could kind of like, and because it becomes that sort of meme in workplace culture of like, oh, there's change, and oh, oh, I have to like move my desk, or I have to, even those little things become kind of blown out. And what I learned is like, every time I moved my desk, and in the first number of years at Enova, I mean, we were a growing company, I probably changed my desk like 20 times in the first 5 years, right? And every time I was like, no, I don't want to change my desk. I like where I sit, I'm comfortable. And then every time I was like, this is better, and so I think it's just realizing that like it is better, change is good. Change is exciting and fun, and it opens up different things that you didn't know you were missing out on, right? And so I've really become such a explicitly, intentionally like pro change person, right? And I kind of hammer that into my team probably ad nauseum. And but I think it's just like I'm now the type of person where I sit in a room, and if somebody's like, okay, we're talking about a reorg, and everybody else is starting to cringe, I'm like, all right, let's do it right now. Like I don't want to even wait the 3 weeks that you're giving us like pre-advance warning. Like I want to start it right now, because it's now I'm like, this is exciting. This is something's going to come out of this, right? And I don't care if we kind of get it wrong, or this part doesn't work as well, because you learn, right? I mean, that's how you learn, and that's how you grow, and that's how you kind of get to the next better answer. And so I think it's just trying to change that mentality a little bit. Just be super intentionally explicit about embracing it, opening yourself up to it, trying something new, and not kind of falling into the sort of norms and expected like, oh, this is awful, right? I don't want to do this, or this, why are we doing this? I don't even understand, even the like, don't break what's, or don't fix what's not broken, right? And I get that, and I'm not saying everybody has to change just for the sake of change, but at the same time, like just try it, because what do you really have to lose, right? I mean, there's a lot that can be gained from it. And so the more you embrace those moments, I think the more you get out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think if there's anything that this past year and a half has taught us, it's that we do have to be resilient to change, and we do have to be adaptable. So I think that that's wonderful advice. Great. So we've got a couple of questions coming in. I want to start with one from Lisa. Lisa asked, in an environment of such bright people as Enova is, how have you branded yourself to help move in your career? And whichever one of you want to jump in here, feel free to.
Yeah, I think for me, and this was something that I heard from this year's mentor, she said, you know, your brand is consistency. And I didn't self-identify that, but she said, what you're known for throughout the organization is consistent results. Like, we know that we can give you something and we don't have to worry about it, right? Like, you are going to take it, you'll run with it, it will be great. You'll let us know if you have any problems, you know, so on and so forth. So I think over the course of 11 years, just having that consistent performance, taking that ownership, you know, making sure that I was delivering results, you know, apparently is my brand, which is cool to have somebody else say that to you. You know, sometimes it's hard to identify those things within yourself. But yeah, for me, I think it's been consistency over the past 10 years. Just, again, that grit, showing up every day in and day out, no matter what's going on, you know, showing up and doing your job, I think has been important.
Awesome. Brianna, I'm going to ask you, we've got two questions that are kind of similar. So they are, where do you see Enova in 5 years? And what excites you the most about the future of Enova?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, super appropriate and a relevant question, I think, to the moment that we're at, right? Because, you know, we have come through a year of unexpected circumstances. And I think it's been really fortuitous in the sense that, you know, I think it's a good time for Enova to take that step back and think about pressing a little bit harder on, you know, what comes next for us, right? Just to give a quick arc of sort of Enova and sort of its, you know, where it's been, right? Like, so we were in one kind of product of, you know, US consumer lending and had one big kind of like big business that was driving everything. And, you know, we spun off from our then parent company. We went public. We kind of had to mature really quickly. We had some stumbles, you know, we had to figure out what that looked like, both, you know, as a company kind of, you know, in financial and sort of, you know, big picture sense, and as a company in sort of the cultural and, you know, how does everybody work in sense, because we were growing rapidly and adding staff and maturing very quickly and kind of, you know, retooling the identity of like that sort of, you know, early days startup tech company to like, okay, now we're more mature and we've got more process, we've got more kind of intention, we've got more guardrails and things like that. But we still want to be nimble and agile and hold on to all the things that made us really good. And we still want to grow. And we still want to, you know, have creative ideas and innovate. And so we kind of threw a lot at the wall and we said, well, what about over here? And what about over there? And maybe we should launch a new product over there. And then we kind of had to say, all right, let's see what stuck. Let's clear away the noise. Let's kind of contract a little bit and focus. And so we went through a number of years of like our strategy of kind of focused growth, right? Where we said, we've got our core businesses. We're going to really invest in those. We're going to stay super focused. And then we started kind of, you know, saying, all right, what's next? Pandemic hits. So now we've got to, you know, sort of adapt and change and, you know, figure out how to make sure, obviously in the early days, nobody was sure what was going to happen, where there are going to be, you know, credit losses, where people are going to not be able to repay, where, you know, where we're going to have to do drastic things. And of course, Enova's been very lucky that we've been able to weather all of that. And, you know, we haven't, we've been able to see our customers through with, you know, making really fast changing kind of options for our customers to help them kind of through their situations. And as a result, that's kept us in good position, and it's allowed us to not have to do any layoffs or any kind of other drastic moves. And so we've got a really healthy workforce that's, you know, totally ready to like open things back up. And so now we're at this great moment where we're starting to press into, all right, well, this happened and this was sort of unexpected and different. And there's, you know, new changes in kind of the regulatory market. So where does this take us? What do we want to be in 5 years? And it's a question that we're talking about a lot today, to say, you know, we've got great core businesses that we want to keep investing in, but maybe we need to kind of push a little bit into that next evolution. And I don't know what that answer is exactly, but I know that the questions are the right questions and they're exciting questions, because it's not just, you know, it takes us from like, okay, we're just going to try to say we're still doing the same thing and we're just going to keep growing it incrementally every year, right? Which at a certain point, diminishing returns and you sort of, you know, lose interest. Instead, it's an environment in which we're saying, okay, let's evolve that. Let's take what we've built and not just sweep it away, but transform it and evolve it into the next big thing. And I think, again, for me, I came in to kind of do that work, right? And it was actually a great conversation I had this past year in terms of my career, like, what do I want to do next? And I had to go back to my roots and say, I came in to do that work. I came in to say, what's next? What do we move into? I want to build something exciting and new and see where that takes us. And I think we're like back in that great moment at Enova of like, what's next? I want to build something that's exciting and new. And, you know, and I get to be a part of that. And I'm really excited to be a part of that conversation because of course it's not, you know, it's like bigger scale and I have a much bigger role and kind of a much bigger voice that I can add to that conversation now. And so I think, you know, Enova will change a lot in the next 5 years. I mean, every 5 years of our existence, we've changed quite dramatically. And I think it'll continue to be exponentially kind of a changing environment over the next 5 years as products change, as teams change, you know, as I think hopefully there's going to be these underpinning currents of, you know, the people, the type of, you know, people that we attract and retain here in terms of their work ethic, in terms of, you know, we've always been very diverse in our perspectives and having lots of diversity kind of in the teams, which I think has been really, really critical and exciting. And I think that will remain and continue to be at the forefront of the culture that we build. And so I hope we keep all those good like underpinnings, being adaptable, being agile, being flexible, being, you know, driven and so forth. But I think the products will change and the company sort of, you know, even the company structure might change a little bit, but I think that change will be really exciting. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of playing out those next 5 years because, you know, again, like that's what I look for and that's what's going to keep me and make me want to stay for those next 5 to 10 years.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, we are at time. So I do want to thank Sarah and Brianna for joining us today. I loved hearing about each of your career journeys. It sounds like it's been a really exciting one and that there's even more excitement on the horizon at Enova. So for our audience, thank you so much for being here today and for all of your thoughtful questions. We will be sending out the recording of today's session, and we certainly encourage you to join Fairygodboss, check out Enova. They've got a lot of open roles right now. So if you are interested in learning more about working with them, please do go and check them out. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day. And thanks again to Enova for hosting today's session.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. And feel free to hit
Courtney.
up Sierra and I on LinkedIn if you're interested in talking more about Enova.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Bye-bye.